here's another reason why you want to take control of what you're doing.
Everything kind of funnels into the only winning move is not to play the game.
So I got to ask permission to buy the gun, and then I got to pay to ask permission to carry the motherfucker outside of my house. How about you go fuck yourself?
Hey guys, how you doing? This is Bruce, aka the Weathered Soul, here on the Weathered Report, and we have a special show to you tonight. Mainly, we're on a tear right now because we have all new shows coming up with all new entrepreneurs and small business people. We're going to be getting into a format where we're going to be doing all the stuff that we wanted to do before, original stuff like homesteading and prepping and small businesses, personal finance, all those things that really I wanted to gear this podcast for, and that's what we're going to do. And I just want to go around and say hi, Ken. How you doing? American is here.
American in the room.
The producer of our morning show, which is on X in the morning, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. You can catch the Weathered View there, and we just appreciate everybody who's watching, anybody who's listening, anybody who wants to tune in and just give us all kinds of opinions and comments. The chat room is open wherever you're at, so just go ahead and you can say hi to us, ask a question while we're going along. And we have a real special guest tonight. Her name is Lisa Monet, and she is a small business owner originally from Minnesota, but because of the political turmoil that we've had in the past, probably 4 years now going on with COVID, is that now she has an establishment that is in Wisconsin. So we want to welcome very much Lisa Monet to the show. Also, I just want to let you know that Lisa has been doing all kinds of appearances all over the place. So we are honored to have anybody who has been on Fox News before. So that was pretty cool. And she's also doing some interviews on all other places that she can get her word out. So we want to introduce Lisa Monet. How you doing, Lisa?
Good. How are you?
We're doing good, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I was really surprised when Ken said, "Hey, I can get Lisa Monet." I'm going like, "I get her! Come on, let's go, get her." We want to welcome you to the show. Yeah. Good. I'm going to let Ken take over and start guiding this interview, and then we will be asking questions and curious about what's going on.
All right. Lisa, thank you again for coming on. For those of you who don't know what's going on in Minnesota, this is all kind of been put together because Walz was picked as the vice president candidate, and we're looking at that. They're painting him to be something he's not. And as soon as that happened, I said, "There's one person that I know that we need to talk to that can really spell out that isn't an activist, that wasn't a political person at all." But her business was destroyed. Her life was turned upside down during the COVID lockdowns in Minnesota, which were as bad as anywhere else in the country. It forced me and my family to move next door to Wisconsin in 2021. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But I did that by choice. They took everything from this woman, Lisa, and I'm going to have her tell her story. It started out, she was a pub owner, which, we talk about small business a lot. If you've ever done anything in restaurateur or owned a pub or a bar, there isn't huge margins there. A lot of times there's turnover. There's all kinds of different things that you have to deal with as a bar owner. And she had one that was very successful in the bar that she opened in 2017. Was doing very well. And then 2020 came and the edict came down from up on high. If it's a bar or restaurant, it has to shut down. You can't have people in person. And that is where the story starts. So Lisa, if you would when was the first notion you had that, there's going to be a problem?
Well, actually, so anyone who knows bar and restaurants in the industry, it's considered recession proof. So if something bad is happening in the country, the economy, war, everything, restaurants are always the ones that thrive. Bars are always the ones that thrive. So, probably I would say the whole country started hearing about the COVID virus coming around early of March of 2020. And, we were a little bit nervous. We were like, what is going on? What is this thing that we're hearing about? But we really didn't worry about our business. Bars and restaurants are recession proof. They're not going to close us down. We'll be fine. Well, March 17th. So I believe the order came March I want to say 12th of 2020. And it said the entire state, I mean, basically the entire country was shutting down. So if anyone who follows bar and restaurants or anyone likes to go out to restaurants, they know what March 17th is. That's St. Patty's Day. So
Right.
the order came too late for us. So we had already ordered all of our food. Every restaurant across the state had already ordered everything for St. Patty's Day. They'd ordered their food. They had ordered their beer, their liquor, everything. We were fully stocked, ready for St. Patty's Day. And the order came that we were to close down on March 17th of 2020 at 5 p.m.
Yep.
Our band started at noon. We had to cancel all of our bands. We didn't have a St. Patty's Day. So at that point, we realized that bar and restaurants aren't recession proof. So, the first shutdown, we did what almost every American, I would say, did. We locked our restaurant. We took everything out of it. We actually opened up our refrigerators to our staff and said, we don't know what's going to happen in our country. So all these perishable items that we have, come in, get them in your fridges. We don't know. We're probably going to be closed down for what were we thinking then? Maybe
a couple weeks.
Was it like 10 days to flatten the curve or something like that?
Yep. 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
2 weeks to flatten the curve. So take what you need for your family. We don't know if you're going to be able to the grocery stores or not. We did everything we're supposed to do. We closed our restaurants and locked everything up and stayed locked for 2.5 months. The first shutdown was for 2.5 months in Minnesota. And if you followed the news in your state, there's different states. So Wisconsin, I believe they were closed for 6 weeks during that first shutdown. And the executive order was overruled in a state court that said that it was an unlawful executive order in Wisconsin. So at that point, we had Minnesota that was closed 100%, and we had Wisconsin that was open 100%. So everyone from Minnesota.
Let me jump in there quick too, because during when that was happening, the company I work at is in Wisconsin, and I lived in Minnesota at the time. I was just crossing the border. Minneapolis and St. Paul, to give a little geography for those of you that are not in the Midwest and don't know about flyover country here. Minneapolis, St. Paul is 22 miles from the border of Wisconsin. So when everything's shut down in one state, the border towns, Hudson, Wisconsin, is right on the border. Exit 1 when you cross over, and the first road you go up within a mile of the highway, there's about 25 bars, and they were packed. Wisconsin, you mentioned, so what happened in Wisconsin is they had the same edict, they had the same tyrannical governor, but what they did have was the Bar and Tavern Association in Wisconsin, and they got the Supreme Court to overturn the unconstitutional law. So Wisconsin basically just opened up again, like nothing had happened. Yeah. And so that's what Lisa's referring to here, because not only, even if they had let her be open, she probably would have done maybe okay, but still everyone was rushing to Wisconsin because they just thought nothing was open. So with that, I just wanted to put that in there. Go ahead. Continue. Yeah.
So I want to say, so in during that first shutdown, we did what I would say 99% of the world did, 99% of Americans did, 99% of everyone did, was we stayed at home. We followed what they said. I ride a motorcycle. We would go out riding, but we didn't even go to Wisconsin. We would ride around. We were like, oh my gosh, is this real? Well, we started it kind of after the 2-week curve, kind of was like, I'm not really sure what's going on here. But, let's do it another 2 weeks, and let's do it another 2 weeks. And we went 2.5 months. And they, I want to say, so it would have been March, April, May. So June 1st, Governor Walz put into an effect another executive order. And what that was we were only allowed to have outdoor dining. So our restaurant needed to be moved outdoors. So we moved everything outdoors, and we served people outdoors. We had an outside bar, and we had our pull tabs outside, and people could go inside to go to the bathroom, but they couldn't be inside, but they could get food for takeout. And it was kind of a mess. So then a month later, I believe it was July 1st, you could come inside. So then we got to come inside in Minnesota, and you couldn't sit at the bar, and you had to have every other table. So we had to have big X's on tables, and we had to move tables across around the bar so nobody could sit at the bar. And I'm not really sure what was going on. So eventually we turned to, I believe it was 50% occupancy. I can't tell you the exact date. It was the July 1st was a 50% occupancy with no bar seating. And I don't even know if we ever were allowed to sit at the bar after that. So we did that. Well, then people started wondering if this virus was really, really what they were saying. You know, probably I would say by August or September, there was kind of rumblings. You know, you couldn't find it on Facebook. You couldn't find it on some of the mainstream. The mainstream wasn't reporting it, but people were starting to do little rumblings, you know, on some of the off-center, you know, I think Telegram and the Rumble. And I was starting to get, you know, wondering what was going on. And then there was a meeting, I want to say maybe in October, when a bunch of bar owners met. And they're like, what's going on? You know, we started hearing rumblings that we're going to get closed down again.
Yep.
And there was an article actually released because we were hearing that we were going to get closed down again. We were like, there's no way he's going to close us down again, but maybe he's going to close us down again. So there was an article released saying he was going to close us down. And I had actually flown down to Texas, and I was in Texas, and I was actually buying the condo as a vacation rental down there. And I'm signing the papers on a Monday, and all of a sudden I see on Facebook and everything else that they're closing the state down again. So I didn't sign the papers. And November 20th came, and Governor Walz took, so this is where we're at. We're at 50% occupancy across the board. Everyone in Minnesota was 50% occupancy. And then all of a sudden Walz decided on November 20th, because bars and restaurants, according to Walz, this is according to Walz and his scientific research, bars and restaurants, people get drunk and they spit more. So when they spit more, they spread COVID. Like this is his scientific thing. So November 20th, everyone's here. All of a sudden, retail stores were open with that executive order on November 20th, which is a week before Black Friday. And bars and restaurants, hair salons, gyms, and I think churches were closed 100%.
Right.
So we went from everyone, hey, you know what, this sucks, but we're even, to 100% just in time for Black Friday. So when you start to follow the money, you can kind of see, you know, maybe Governor Walz was getting a little bit of kickback. You know, maybe when I would go to Home Depot, there was a brand new, I believe it was a Menards and Walmart, or in Menards in Apple Valley. Yep. And the occupancy on the door before Black Friday was 6,000 people. And I'll tell you what, there were 6,000 people in that store. And every single store that you went to, driving around, we were driving around and I would live stream. And I was so angry. I just live streamed it, like, what is going on? Like, we would drive down Holyoke in Lakeville and my bar's closed. And then we would drive past all these stores and there's thousands, like not even hundreds of people. There were thousands of people in these stores. Like,
yes,
just shopping like it was normal, which it should be normal. But it wasn't for us.
Right, so, right, and that right there is selective tyranny. I mean, that's just what happens when you've got a government that's just going, well, we can't shut down the liquor stores because that will create all kinds of problems, but we can shut the bars down, we can shut down the gyms, we can shut down. And the meeting you were talking about, I believe that was the one in I'm not going to mention the name of the restaurant or anything because it was completely illegal, that we all met because restaurants and bars were closed and we had 110 people in a room talking about this. And one of the things I found very interesting about that room, you were there was a gentleman that owned a gym that was also, if you remember, he was getting hammered too.
Mark Royce.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yep.
And I remember I was sitting next to a gentleman that owned like 25 different restaurants. It wasn't a chain, but he owned a bunch of different restaurants. And he basically stood up and said, yeah, this is wrong. We hate this and stuff. I'm going to be okay. There isn't much I can do about this. And we're all like, there's everything you can do about this. You're the person that owns 25 restaurants that should just stay open. And what's he going to do?
Right.
You know, there was you and there was I'm trying to remember her name. Was it Larvita?
Yep. Larvita.
Yeah. And she was another one that they came after pretty hard.
Yeah. There was 4 women that stood up and they decimated us. So, yeah. So,
and Keith Ellison, who's the Attorney General, he's a monster when he came to dealing with these people. I mean, you can talk about, as we get a little further deeper, and I'll let you keep going in the story, as you were closed down again. Then they start finding you when you decide to stay open. But I'll let you. I'm getting ahead of myself, getting ahead of the story a little bit. So go ahead and continue with where we are.
One thing I want to interject real quick is
Sure.
one reason why they didn't close down a lot of liquor stores is because a lot of these cities own the liquor stores.
That's true. Yep.
Like in Apple Valley and Farmington and Rosemont, the cities actually own and run the liquor stores.
the municipals. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
The municipals. Yep. The muni.
Yep. And they actually, at some point, when that executive order went into position, Brahm, who owns Lifetime Fitness, he stood up and he had enough money to make enough stink that they opened. All of a sudden, you didn't get COVID at gyms anymore because Brahm stood up. You know,
miraculous.
It was amazing. It was like God sent. You know.
Yeah.
So
you can play tennis and not get COVID in a gym. Oh, it's perfect.
But you can't go to a bar and eat a meal.
That's right. That's where the COVID is made.
Yeah.
So I remember November, the end of November, when they shut our state down, November 20th, they shut our state down. I closed the restaurant during the day. And that night I got home and I was like, pissed. I got on a flight. Actually, no, that day they shut it down. That's right. They shut it down because we pulled all of our money out of our pull tabs and had to close all of our pull tabs down and pull our alcohol again. And I went to a rally at the governor's mansion. And I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to the rally. You know, I'm out there. I got if you ever seen a picture of me back then, I had these big white furry boots that I always wore. I always wore them because my feet are always cold, and I found these amazing pair of bear paws. So I was like, people were taking pictures of me because I was this blonde with big white furry boots and American pants and a white furry head wrap, and it was who I was. It's who I am. But I started kind of meeting like-minded people there. So that night when I got home, I got on my computer and I booked a trip to Vegas by myself. I flew out to Vegas, rented a Harley, and drove in the mountains for 3 days, and came back to Minnesota and said, I'm done. I'm done. There's got to be something that we can do. We got to start fighting back. So I continued to go to these rallies, you know, and actually I had gone to a rally. So if you remember in Minnesota, I can digress, right? The whole George Floyd stuff that had happened in the spring. Like, let's not forget that Governor Walz let our state burn for 4 days.
Yeah.
That he left
I was
our
working in
officers.
Minneapolis at the time.
What'd you say?
I was working in Minneapolis at the time.
Yeah. And he left our officers in the precinct. They had to battle their way out through the crowds, through the riots. He left them there. He didn't send in the National Guard. So let's, you know, when we talk about Walz, we got to remember that it wasn't just bars and restaurants that he abandoned. He abandoned our officers. He abandoned our cities, you know. So I started meeting more and more people. We had rallies at the Capitol and rallies at the governor's mansion. And then I decided, I'm like, forget this. I'm opening. I'm doing this. And all of a sudden, I was contacted by this group called Reopen Minnesota, and they're like, you don't have to do it alone. We've got people that want to do it. We're all going to do this. And there was a petition signed of 200 bars and restaurants across the state that had agreed and committed to opening on December 16th. And they had talked about doing it in waves, and they're like, well, should we do it in waves? Should we do the 16th, the 17th, and 18th? Well, if you remember, and I was planning on doing it on the 18th. I wanted to do it on December 18th because Walz had issued another executive order that was in no effect December 18th. So I figured if I'm going to violate an order, that's the order I'm going to violate. That goes into effect December 18th. Well, instead, Reopen Minnesota decided, let's all do it at one time. We're going to do it on the 16th. So a lot of bars and restaurants weren't what we were, which we were a very successful restaurant in downtown Lakeville, a town of 70,000 people. With our bar was on Main Street with glass in the front. Like, there was no covering what we were doing. There was no like, there were some bars out in the country that were able to do it. They ended up, some got caught, some didn't. There was probably hundreds, maybe thousands of small town bars that were able to open up in Minnesota and do it and not be told on, because there was a lot of law officers, there was a lot of sheriffs, there's a lot of law enforcement that believed in what we were doing. There was a lot of people that believed in what we were doing, and they saw the tyranny of it. So they were able to do it without the fanfare that I was pretty much forced, I feel like, to do, because I was in downtown Lakeville. So I let everyone know this is what I'm doing. And actually, about 2 weeks before that, I'll regress a little bit. It was actually December 9th. I had a rally outside at Alibi, and I had a bunch of keynote speakers there. The mayor had contacted me, and he said, I agree with what you're doing. I can't support it, but I understand why you're doing it. The only thing I ask is don't put Lakeville on the front page of the news. Just don't put us on the map. But and I knew the mayor. He came to my bar. He came for lunch with his wife and dinner. I was a Rotarian. I was on the executive board of the Chamber of Commerce. We donated lunches twice a month for our police officers. We were involved in every single organization in Lakeville. Panaprog. I was on Panaprog board. Like I said, I wasn't just on the Chamber of Commerce. I was an executive member on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I was very active in our community. We donated to every single school, Lakeville North, Lakeville South, and actually Farmington, because I was from Farmington. Anyone that came to us and asked for something, we gave back what the community gave us. We were integrated in that community. We were loved by everyone. Some crazy stuff happened with my business partner, my fiance, whatever. We can talk about that later. But we were loved, So he came to me, Doug Anderson, and he came to me and he's like, Lisa, don't put Lakeville on the map. Then I get a call from the chief of police. I understand what you're doing. I can't tell you I back you. They didn't want a lot of fanfare in Lakeville. So when a week and a half later on December 16th, when we decided to open, I really felt like the only way that I was going to be able to open and have the support of everyone that I needed was to open, and was to open loud, was to let everyone know. I went on every newspaper, every newscast that listened, because once you say it to one person, spread like wildfire. Everyone wanted to talk to me. We had
Lakeville's on the map.
Lakeville was on the map then. And we had cameras lined up on the street watching us open our front doors that first day on December 16th. The first person that ever walked into our bar back in December 31st of 2017, he's the one who held the door for the people to walk into our bar on December 16th. He had passed away, and he was a veteran. He actually passed away, I think, 2 years ago, but he was the guy who held the door for everyone. And it was crazy when people came in, because anyone who watches this and isn't from the Midwest has no idea what a winter in the Midwest is. But for us, a winter in the Midwest is horrible. So we were already 1 month into winter. We had no outlet. We couldn't go anywhere. Bars or restaurants. We had no community. We couldn't go to our gyms. You know what I mean? We were shut down. We were closed down. We were isolated. And people walking into my bar. I was just talking about this today, and it was crazy. You walk in and you're it's like you're in a black tunnel. And this is what it was. They would walk in and their faces would open up and they'd be like, and they would start crying. I had people sobbing and coming up to me and saying, my God, thank you. Thank you for making me feel normal again. I didn't know what I was going to do. These are people who just needed interaction, because we were in winter of Minnesota, So that was December 6th when we decided to open. And so it was crazy. We were packed. We were crazy. We had news crews there. We had everyone there. We had a ton of support. I was not able to get on social media because we're annihilated, And I got home that night, and then I got on social media, and we had a big Reopen Minnesota chat. So I get on the chat, and I'm like, oh my God, how did it go? And it was crickets. Nobody responded. And then I started looking, and we were one of the only bars that opened. So out of the 200 bars that were supposed to open, we were like one of 10 that actually stood up. We actually had 5 in Lakeville that committed on that petition to open. I was the only one.
They cowered.
And what'd you say?
They basically cowered under the pressure of Walz.
They did, you know, and I understand it, you know, and when we decided to open, I sent out a message to my staff, and I said, we're deciding to open. This is my decision to open. I've read the executive order. I know what they can do to me. And let me add, what they did to me wasn't what the executive order said they could do to me.
That's right.
That was not what I thought I was facing. So I gave my staff the choice. I said, if you need to come back to work for your family, for financial, because of your beliefs, come back. If you don't feel like you can come back because of your beliefs, your beliefs, your family, don't come back. But either way, know that I respect your opinion, and I respect your beliefs. And I think that was one of the things that a lot of what I did and what I stood for got twisted, because I never once said, this is what you have to do. You're an idiot if you don't do it. You're an idiot if you wear a mask. You're an idiot if you get a vaccine. It wasn't about being an idiot. It wasn't about what you should do is what I should do. It was about our freedom as Americans. It was about what our forefathers fought for. It was about what our country's about. It was a freedom of choice. It was a freedom. If I want to make the decision to get a vaccination, if I want to make a decision to wear a mask, if I want to make a decision to work, if I want to make a decision to open my business as an American, as our forefathers, as our veterans, as our military, as they fought for us, they fought for our rights. And what Walz did with those executive orders is he stripped it. He basically said, everyone who fought for the rights of America, I don't care, because I'm one person, and I'm going to tell you that you're going to do what I say. And he took away our rights. He took away our freedoms. It wasn't, we would have been fine financially. We were okay financially. It wasn't about a financial decision. It was about, you can't take our rights away. You don't have the right as a governor, as a president, as a senator, as a mayor. You don't have those rights to take away what was given to us, what was fought for, what people died for. You don't get that right. And that's why I stood up. It wasn't, oh my God, we got PPP money. We had a very, very successful summer. You know, Alibi, we did over $1 million a year. We were going to be okay. You know, some of our staff came to me and said, we're not going to be okay. I said, come back and work. I had people that day that we opened coming in that I didn't know. And they said, I need to work. I can't pay my bills. I can't buy my kids Christmas presents. Right. Can I jump behind your bar? I had an old person that I had worked with, one of my, love him, Bruce Ellison, if you're watching, my heart's always with you, because I'm going to share this and I know you're going to see this. I'll get choked up because some of the things that people did for us. He came walking into my bar that day and he looked at me and I was like, Bruce, oh my God, you're here to support me. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm not here to support you. Where's the kitchen? I'm here to help you. And he walked back in my kitchen. He walked back on my line and he got on my line and he started cooking. You know? And I think that it really, really, there were people who supported me that they supported it because what it was right. And there was a lot of people that didn't support me. I got decimated on social media that first night. I think I had like 300 comments. And I mean, people were like, you're a super spreader, you're a killer. I hope you die. I hope your family dies. I hope your grandkids die. Like, yeah, it was horrible.
And I totally remember that. I totally remember that because I as you know, the whole mask mandate was if you had a medical condition, you didn't have to wear one. So I just didn't wear one, mainly because it's hard for me to breathe. And so there's certain places that enforce it, like Menards and Apple Valley, they enforced it. Walmart,
Jimmy John's
in Egan, they enforce it heavily. But Fleet Farm in Lakeville, they didn't enforce it at all. They let me go by. And I was shopping in Walmart in Lakeville one day, and this old lady, she comes up to me, she's like, "Sir, where's your mask?" I'm like, "Bend over and I'll show you." And she got pissed and she ran off to one of the workers to complain. And they're like, "There's nothing we can do."
Yeah. I want to jump in here. I think by the time that you opened up and that, California didn't up until way before, way after Minnesota did, but the data that had been, I mean, let's face it, everybody was scared when we locked down. I mean, there was not one person that said we shouldn't lock down. People were scared.
No, I did.
But then as the data started coming out, and then the upper echelons of our government, like Walz, like Governor Newsom. I'm in California. I'm in warm California. Jason calls Minnesota, cold California. But I lived in California, which was one of the hardest lockdowns in the nation, if not the hardest lockdown in the nation.
Probably,
but as soon as the data started coming out, where they were starting to say, "Hey, where'd the flu go?" You know, because there was no flu deaths that year, or there was very little flu deaths. And I am personal friends with some people that, you know, their family members died of COVID, but at the time when they were doing the protocols in the hospitals, they were sticking tubes down these people's throats and just exemplifying their death. I mean, so I think the point that I'm trying to make is that you decided to go ahead and open up. My boss never shut down. I went back to work out of necessity, just because I had 2 weeks of this. I was done. I started seeing the data come out even before then, because Newsom and Nancy Pelosi had already defied the orders that they had laid down for the state. And I went, this has got to be bullshit. So I guess the question is, and I never got it from, I think I did get it from Ken and Jason, but what was the first time that you saw these people like Walz, Ellison, other higher ups that were defying this order, and they were found, you know, at a salon or at a restaurant? Was there anything like that was going on that actually pushed you even more towards opening up?
You know, there was rumors that Walz was here and Walz was there. I believe he had flown down to Florida for a family vacation at some point when we were closed. I messaged somebody. I'm like, "Do you have a picture of Walz at the bar?" And they're like, "It hasn't been proven it was him." You know, but I guess it wasn't about necessarily what they weren't doing. It was about what we should have been allowed to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I think I was talking to him before. I didn't follow politics. I was not a political activist in any of this. When they closed down our state the first time, I didn't know the name of our governor. I had to remember. I was telling him I had an acronym. Okay, I'm like, right, red, Republican. Okay, like I didn't even know what I was. I just knew I was an American. I knew I believed in our Constitution. I believed in our rights, but I didn't follow any of that stuff. And people would be like, "So what do you do when, you know, Governor Walz calls you up?" And I had to think, or what do you do when Walz calls you up and asks you what you're doing or whatever? And I was like, "Who's Walz?" You know, I had to think about it, you know, because I didn't follow this stuff. You know, I learned real quickly who Keith Ellison was. I believe it was the next day when I got a stack of papers on my bar this big, and I got served.
Yeah.
So I learned their names really, really fast. I learned Keith Ellison's name very quickly after December 16th. I believe it was on December 17th when I was served. So yeah.
So I guess when December 16th and 17th came around, you got paperwork. When did you decide that this was all just not necessarily a ruse, but that the government was actually, you know, just heavy-handed at everybody? Because it took a while for California to realize that. My boss and my employer right away just said, "This is all crap." so he had never shut down. He let his employees like me and everybody kind of say, stay away until you feel comfortable to come in. I worked at home for about 2 weeks. I'm going like, I'm out of here. I got to go back to the office. But
that was back in March, right? I mean,
I was back in March. I think I went back to work middle of April. And I was getting, the side eye from everybody. I didn't wear a mask at all the whole time I was there. In fact, I walked into every establishment that I ever went into. I mean, they had such a ridiculous protocol. It was incredible. You could walk into a restaurant, but you had to have a mask. But as soon as you sat down, you could take the mask off. Like, COVID was here, up above here, but it wasn't below, your headline that's sitting in a chair. So it was ridiculous. So when actually did you decide that the government was too heavy-handed and this was going on?
Probably. I mean, they didn't shut our state down again until November 20th. So, when we were at 50%, like I said, I was starting to kind of September, October, kind of like, well, when are we going to be able to be normal again? Like, when's this whole thing going to be 50% occupancy lifted? And I think we were still at a 10 o'clock close time. And, when are we going to be done with this? And then November 20th, when they came, I was like, are you serious? And then that's when I kind of was like, yeah, the government's definitely overstepping. It's not about a virus anymore. I don't know what it was about. I always joked around and I'm like, yeah, I think Walz's wife cheated on him with a bartender. Like, that was my theory for a long time. I don't know if it's true or not, but I feel like it may have something to do with what happened. But yeah, I met with Scott when all that stuff happened. I had met with Scott Jensen. So when I opened, I think I was kind of naive to the fact of what they were going to do, honestly. Like, I mean, I knew I was breaking an executive order. I wasn't breaking the law. I read the executive order. I knew what they could do to me, which was suspend licensing until compliance and fine me. I think it was $1,000 to $2,000, $3,000 a day. Like, that was what the executive order could do to me. Yeah, I didn't have a lawyer when I opened, and I should have. I should have researched that a little bit more. I should have found a lawyer. I had a lawyer reach out to me, Mike Patton. I think he reached out because it was going to be a high-profile case, and he didn't realize, like, I wasn't going to listen to him. He'd be like, Lisa, you got to close down. I'm not closing down. They're going to put you in jail. I'm not closing down. But they're filed a contempt against you. I'm not closing down. You got to close down. Just close down. Come on, just close down. So I closed down for like 2 days. I think I closed down. I opened like November 16th. I think I closed December 21st, then maybe the 28th. Then I opened on the 31st or the 29th, opened again. He's like, come on, I had permanent injunctions, temporary injunctions, contempt of courts filed against me. I had lawsuits by the Attorney General, by the Minnesota Department of Health. My food service license was suspended. And then all of a sudden, COVID was gone. January 10th, COVID was gone in Minnesota. It was a miraculous healing,
all this over a little itty bitty bar. All over this over a little bitty bar.
So
yeah.
A few things I want to interject real quick. You mentioned Panaprog earlier, and for those that don't know, Panaprog is basically just like a county fair, but for the city. And also, executive orders are not laws; they're just a mandate that the executive branch should follow, but they're not laws. And
correct.
People think they're laws, and they're not.
Oh, I know. I read about them. and they apparently there's no lawyer that wants to take on that fight, because I was like, it's not an executive order. If I had a few lawyers, Patton, we were always on the defense. I still feel like there's a lawsuit. I've had a couple people in the last week reach out to me and say, if I find a lawyer to file this against you or file this against Walz, are you willing to sign? Absolutely. It's not even about the money anymore. I mean, I would love to recoup the 10 years. Well, at that point, we had 12 years left on our lease, and we were making over, our selling over $1 million a year. And let's not forget, I had 2 restaurants at this time. So I had 2 separate restaurants, 2 separate LLCs. My second restaurant in Northfield's a very, very liberal community. And I felt like the best place for me to fight it was in Lakeville, where I could have the publicity and the backing and the support of the people that knew me. Because Northfield, I was more of just an owner. I was an owner operator, you know. Yeah, we opened when Governor Walz on January 10th decided to reopen our state. I was great. It was great. You know, everyone got to open, and he through the shutdowns, we stayed open till 2:00 liquor license. When he reopened our state, he said we had to close at 10:00, and at that point, I followed that law. So I followed what every other bar owner was doing, closing at 10:00, and then the end of January. So because my liquor license was suspended, I didn't know what was going on. I waited, you had till January 31st to file for your food service license. So I filed for my food service license, and the Minnesota Department of Health denied my food service license. They revoked my food service license. So our food service license, so if you read the executive order and what they could do to you, what it was is they could, licensing, I believe it read exactly, licensing agencies were able to enforce licensing through compliance. So once January 10th came, I was in compliance. I followed all the executive orders. I followed the 10 p.m. I was in compliance. Well, the Minnesota Department of Health decided to not reissue me a food service license for 2021. And you can't have a bar without a food service license. Well, I tried. So
give it a shot.
I'm gonna give it give it a shot. So when you look at that, you know, they actually violated how the Minnesota food license reads is the only way they can pull your food service license is if you violate the food code of 2019. I never violated any food codes. I passed all my food licenses. I didn't do anything to get a food service license revocation, non-reissuance, except for violate an executive order, which is not law. So my food service license was taken. And I was sued, filed. I literally have probably a box this big of paperwork. So basically they said, without a food service license, you can't have a liquor license. We're forcing you to close. My lawyer said, if you don't close, you're going to go to jail. Okay. So at that point, I believe that it was in maybe March, I was forced to close, and I was forced to close completely. They would not give me a food service license. And I actually, my Northfield restaurant, I needed to file. So my business partner had gone through some really serious mental and chemical things. So when COVID happened in March of 2020, not only were we locked into the house, he was dealing with a lot of mental things. He decided that drugs was the best way to do it. Ended up having a psychotic episode that was turned into something that it wasn't, which I know what it was. The paper said it was this thing. If you read the police reports and you read what he was found guilty of, he was found guilty of a discharge of a firearm. He was in a really dark place. And unfortunately, when I decided to violate the executive order, everything that happened, our lives were smeared all over the front pages of every newspaper. Right. And
locally, the way that it was covered locally, I understand the national thing when people started poking at you, because you were on Fox News back then. I remember that.
Yeah.
But locally, the local news channels treated you like you were the murderess of, you were Medusa, basically. You know, where you just, anyone that saw you would die of COVID. The way they spelled it out. I rewatched some of that footage this week after you and I talked. I'm like, I'm going to go back and see what the local people were saying about it. And then the local news that are the mom and pop, little morning shows of, they do the little, here's what you do in Minnesota, and you go to the zoo and State Fair, and look at, here's a cherry or spoon with a cherry on it, and here's this evil person that's trying to open her bar and feed her family. It's like, this doesn't make any sense, guys. And the draconian, because Facebook, all of the social media companies, Twitter, all of them were suppressing anything that had to do, unless it was against, if you had said anything against COVID or I went to Sturgis that year in 2020. I brought my son, and I'm like, we're all going to die, or this is nothing. And I did a lot of research. Bruce brought up the flu, and I just mentioned this because you were painted as such an evil person for nothing, because the flu in Minnesota kills 6,000 to 8,000 people every year. That year, the flu killed 32 people, not 3,200, 32. And then 6,000 to 8,000 people died of COVID. So and then on a Friday in January of 2021, on the information dump that the government does when they don't want you to really look at it, the CDC put out a thing saying that the test they use, that's the good test. Remember, there was the test. Was it the PCR?
The PCR test.
PCR test. Their study came out and said, well, we can't actually easily differentiate between influenza and COVID, but just to be on the side of caution, call it COVID if you get a positive test. And that explains everything. But it was, again, by then they were just like, we got rid of Trump. Now what else can we do? Yeah. And someone like you that stood up to it. And again, you're not some right-wing nut job out, you never
I didn't even know I was right.
You didn't even know you were right.
I didn't even know I was right. I just knew I was an American.
Yeah, you knew what was right, but you weren't. And they painted you out to be this Tea Party. Right. I mean, I remember watching the whole thing, and I'm just like, I've been in this Tea Party thing for 10 years.
And Ken,
I don't know her. You know what I mean? And I would have if you'd have been an activist in there.
Let's not forget that my bar got vandalized by Antifa.
That's
nice.
right.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jake.
I was working in healthcare at the time, and healthcare got a huge kickback if they marked COVID as the cause of death. So healthcare was heavily into being COVID compliant, completely COVID compliant.
So my comment and question to you was, you weren't political when this all happened. And what surprises me, and I want to know this, is that when you opened, did you see a drop in your customers opposed to before when you were there? Did anybody know that they were Democrat or Republican at that time? And I mean, to me, I was always into politics, but I never kind of like divided the line in between who's this and who's that. Did you see any of that happening with the people that patronized your establishment? Was there an actual divide in between them, or was everybody just open to it? Because you've had to have, Democrats and Republicans and independents all mixed together in your patronage, right?
Right. We've always run a pretty. At the end of the day, it was I guess a right-wing bar, but I don't know if you call it right-wing. I mean, we had the American flag, we had with the blue line, the red line, the white line. We supported police officers. So I don't know if that's considered right-wing. I don't know what it's considered. I just considered it American. So we really didn't see. Oh.
Yeah, I think the shame is that it really divided our nation into two factions. And then, I live in California where we were locked down, pretty much the hardest. And even though we have, the mask wearers, the ones that are still wearing masks today, they're still going through the COVID protocols, even though the emergency is over. We still have people that are still going by the rules because they're so in fear, but they're so glad that things are open. So there's a weird duopoly dichotomy that happens here in California. And it's kind of weird because everybody's there at the stores, everybody's there at the restaurants, everybody's there, every place else in concerts and other situations. And just depending on what crowd that you are in and hanging around at the time determines on how you're going to act. So if you're around this crowd, you wear a mask. If you're around the other crowd, you wear the American flag. It's kind of weird like that. And I think
our bar was just. It was a blue collar bar, but it was a white collar bar, but it's in suburbia. And it was just, I didn't see none of really of our customers ever abandoned us. You know what I mean? If anything, they stood stronger by us. You know, I did get, there's some people who definitely were like, we don't agree with what you're doing and we won't ever come back to your bar. But the majority of those messages and the stuff that you would see on Facebook, you know, the thousands of hate messages that we got and death threats, they weren't from our customers. Right. You know, it was the people that were with us all along were the people that stayed with us all along. And the people that came to us after that were the people that supported what I did and what we stood for, which was being an American. It wasn't about anything else that anyone else thought it was. It was about standing up for our rights, you know. So people just supported the decision that I made.
So I guess I'd like to fast forward just a little bit. So at the end of it, what was the actual, all right, so the bar got closed. They took your food license, so you couldn't get a liquor license. Was there fines, or was there, so what was the end game that made you have to finally pull out of close the bars down and then open up in Wisconsin, the next state over?
So a quick recap. So in Lakeville, we lost our food service license. My bar in Northfield, I needed to apply for a new liquor license. My liquor license was declined by the city of Northfield City Council on a 3-4 split vote under direction of Chief Elliott, who said I was of not moral character to have a liquor license in their city. The mayor voted in favor of giving me a liquor license. One of the city members voted that they didn't know anything about what they were talking about, so they were going to just take Chief Elliott's word for it. When Chief Elliott came in, he brought the 160-page document saying what a super spreader I was. So I lost my food license, or I lost my liquor license in Northfield. I lost my food licenses in Alibi, Lakeville. I was served at the administrative judges, filed a revocation of my liquor license for 5 years in the state of Minnesota, which barred me from having a liquor license in the state of Minnesota for 5 years. At that point, I cried for months, and then I decided I wasn't going to sit and take it. So I reached out to somebody that knew the president of the Wisconsin Tavern League and found out if I was legally able to have a bar in Wisconsin. I had never violated a law. I was a law-abiding citizen. I'd never done anything that would bar me from having a liquor license besides violating the executive order. I found a bar right on the border, about 5 minutes from Red Wing, and I bought it on a contract for deed because I was broke at that point. I was able to get my liquor license there, and the night before my summary judgment hearing, so it would be almost 2 years in February, I filed personal bankruptcy to basically protect me if I lost in court. I lost in court. I was slapped with a $300,000 fine, and $300,000 fine. $160,000 of that was Attorney General's fees. So when we talk about how hard they came after me and what kind of manpower they came after me $160,000 hard with legal fees, with what they used to pay their lawyers to come after me of Minnesota tax dollars. That's what I was worth, was $160,000 of legal fees.
They came after you with a full battalion and the full army.
Absolutely, $160,000 worth, and
that's ridiculous.
Yep, filed personal bankruptcy. In December of, so what would this be, 2023? I got a letter from the Attorney General saying if I signed something that said I ever violate an executive order, that they would waive my $300,000 fine, which basically was they didn't want to have egg on their face because they thought my bankruptcy was going to be approved. The next day, I got a letter of denial for my personal bankruptcy. They said that they couldn't account for $30,000 of my assets and an engagement ring that I had sold to my aunt to try to keep my business. And my bankruptcy was denied. So my reason why I filed bankruptcy was to essentially not have that $300,000 fine. The Attorney General did that paperwork, and I'm fine with that. I didn't file bankruptcy to get away from debt. I filed bankruptcy to get away from a lawsuit that I would lose at the state level with the Attorney General. That administrative court a year ago also decided that the judgment of my 5-year revocation was unjust and unfair because it didn't match. I believe there's only been 11 people in the state history that have ever gotten a revocation of 5 years, me being one of them. Wow. And what I did it didn't justify a 5-year revocation of my liquor license, so it was suspended for 60 days, which came 3 years too late to save my bars. Now I own a bar in Wisconsin. Been there 2.5 years, and I love it. I mean,
and how is it? How is that? This is I want to. We're coming to an end of this first part of our show.
I talk a lot.
No, we do too.
Totally
the
fine.
4 of us could go for till 3 a.m. But so to end on a sweet spot. Now your new place is doing well, and I want to put a caveat out there before we got going on the show. Before we went live here tonight, Lisa very carefully explained. She's like, I'm not in this to promote my business. I'm not trying to do this. I'm not trying to do this for I just want the word to get out. So I'm going to promote her business, and it's a wonderful bar. It's just far enough away. I haven't been to it yet, but I've been following you on there, and you and I run into each other at different things. But I'm going to try to get down there this weekend for sure. Maybe Jason, you can meet me down there.
Yeah,
but,
definitely. It's you said it's outside of Red Ring, right?
Yeah.
Bruce, nobody cares about you. So
California,
you know where the Canyon Valley Trail is, right? The bike path that starts in Canyon Falls and ends in Red Wing.
Do I know where it is?
Yeah. Do you know where that's at?
Can you ride a Harley on it?
No, you can only walk or ride.
I don't know where that is then.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't know. Because that's bicycles.
When I go and ride my bike on there, it's 40 miles one way and then 40 miles back, and I'll usually do it twice. I'll usually do it twice, but if now that I know that you're in Red Wing, I may stop out there one of these days and maybe even meet Ken out there too. I don't know how much I can drink because I've got or eat
40 miles to go.
I'll bring the Suburban, throw the bike in back.
Because I've got celiac, so I can't have any gluten, but I'm sure that you've got some gluten-free options there.
Absolutely.
As far as drinking,
we have literally our cows. Freaking Bessie the cow was killed last week. We serve it as burgers. We have farm fresh burgers. Our food's amazing. We have really good solid food.
Nice.
And the bar's doing well.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear the success story. So when we get on the other side here, we'll be more concentrated towards your efforts on starting this new bar in Wisconsin and going through all the motions. I'm interested to find out about this billboard, so we'll wait for that on the other side. And I've heard many stories when I was in Minnesota, and a lot of them are hilarious. And it was definitely a culture shock for me when I was there. But to learn about Minnesota and how it kind of it's carbon copy of California. I am not shocked because there's a lot of horror stories here. We had a lot of horror stories with churches and things like that paid lots of fines for staying open and things like that. Most of them got pushed to the wayside and nothing was done really about it. But basically, the hypocrisy of the upper echelons, the establishment here in California, did pay the price. Although they're still in power, because they'll always be in power, because that's just basically what they are. Los Angeles County and the Bay Area are both the largest voters block in the whole United States. So it's kind of hard to get over when your state is almost all red, and although they just completely vote despite their noses. But that's another story for another day.
And Bruce, I'm not kidding when I say that Minnesota is a cold California. It is.
Side note, I was born in San Francisco.
I was born and raised in San Jose, so I wasn't too.
I was born and raised in Wisconsin, so I would like to go there. I would like to go there or to South Dakota, but trying to get the wife to go there is another story.
Take us down, Ken.
All right. Well, Lisa, I can't thank you enough for being here. Like I said, we have if you want to hang out a little bit, we do a little after hours thing that we talk some more, and maybe we can hear some more about the good things that happened. And this is the Weathered Report podcast with Bruce McGee leading, but tonight he's just kind of just in there for the ride, which
trying
is
to mix
nice.
it around, but no,
Mixing it up.
Really, we do appreciate you being here. And if you'd like to plug anything that you've got going on right now, or we could wait till the other side and do it then, but we really appreciate you being here. You're welcome to come on anytime to tell your story, because I think it's a really important story that
Absolutely.
people should listen to, not only because we went through this COVID situation, but because we're going through a situation right now where we have to make a decision on which way our country is going. And I think that your story personifies the struggle of what people that love freedom and liberty and common sense are all about. And I think your story is really important. I thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, guys, we're going to be on tomorrow morning for the X Spaces, which is the Weathered View. Come see us 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. on X.
Pacific.
Overtime.
He always leaves off the Pacific time, like anyone cares. No one's going to be listening at 6 o'clock in the Midwest.
and we are going to be back next week with another round of guests and commentary and all that other good stuff on the weather report. So you're all welcome to go, and we'll see you guys later. Take care.
Thank you.